Hi, my name is James Wiley, and I represent the life-saving project ReflectionsFromWithin.net, or more commonly known as the YouTube channel Reflections From Within Podcast. I want to thank my friends with me today, Andrew Dodge, representing Unforbidden Truth, and forensic psychologist Dana Anderson. Thank you all for joining in, because we are about to share some amazingly honest conversations covering tough subjects. But we are about to share some amazingly honest conversations covering tough subjects. One of the things we're going to discuss are red flags, potential ways to truly intervene with intention and effective results. There are 4 cases that illustrate red flags that signal upcoming events where intervention may have changed the outcome, or in other words, potentially saved lives. We can't change the cases that have already happened, but perhaps we can learn from these previous cases to better equip us for when new circumstances arise. The 4 cases I have in mind are the Trump shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, the Winder, Georgia school shooting, my personal experience, and the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle. With all 4 scenarios, there are examples of red flags that were identified but were not effectively addressed. I look forward to examining each case. Dana, it's my understanding that you've asked your followers some questions that we'll be going over. Will you please take the floor and tell us more?
All right. Well, as you said, James, the truth will set you free. And I think as I've asked my followers what they really want to hear, and I think that they do want to hear the truth about the events of your case and what happened that night. So your truth as far as why you killed. Can you tell me that?
So you're asking me why I killed?
Yes, that was one of the number 1 questions that came in people want to understand your motive, what you were thinking and feeling at that time. Your why.
All right.
And then
Let's just get right into it then, right?
Yeah, and then to follow up on that, red flags, as you mentioned, what could have someone said to you to intervene, to change the outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I'll start with that, and then you can ask me to clarify if I'm not clear, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Andrew and I have been working on telling the story of my childhood leading up to the events. And, I think right off the bat, the easiest way to say it shortly is desperation leads to desperate acts. And as a 15-year-old kid, I didn't know who I was. When I looked at my family, I thought it was breaking apart. I thought I was nothing but a loser because that's what I told myself, because people that I looked up to told me that, and I echoed those words, which is where self-talk plays a huge role. And, when you abuse yourself and you get yourself in a negative mindset and you say things through circumstances and you have bad core beliefs, like the dumbest core belief is, one core belief is you always do what you say you're going to do no matter what, because you said it and you're only as good as your word. Well, as an 11-year-old child, when someone came to our door and rang the doorbell and opened our door, our dog that had lived with me my entire life of 11 years, he bit this man. Well, Becky came home and she immediately took him to the vet and had him put down. And I screamed at her in her face, telling her, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. And to go a little deeper, she was the principal of a private Christian school that I went to in 3rd grade, where all my lessons came out of the Bible. And I learned an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's a core belief you learn. And so I wasn't mature enough to process that. As a children, we're pretty literal as a child. Another thing that happened, which Andrew and I kind of slightly went over, it hasn't been produced yet, but when I was 6, I was involved in a car accident. And I was the older brother, and Jesse was the younger brother. And he the door swung open when we went around a corner, and he fell out of the vehicle and ended up in a coma for 3 months. And when he survived, he was deaf in one ear and blinded in one eye. And from then on, it was always my fault that he suffered, and that's all I ever saw was him suffering. And that leads to another core belief that's totally misguided as a child. You never let an animal suffer, and you don't let people suffer. You put them out of their misery. So whenever I looked at him, I felt guilt for causing him the pain. I saw him suffering. I didn't see the joy and the life that he had. And, you know, I saw when people picked on him, and I viciously protected him. But I wasn't able to see past my own shame and guilt for letting him down, because that was my best friend. You know, that was my little... And so there's 2 instances. And so with the family, with its own circumstances and just the desperate way I grew up, you know, I had the stupid idea that I was taking all the pain away. I was making it all go away, and what I did not understand is, you know, as a 15-year-old, I thought I could fix things. I thought I could, if I took the pain away, everything would be all right. No one would be suffering anymore. And, you know, it's not it wasn't my responsibility to fix things. You know, now as an old man, when I look back, the one thing I'd do different is I would just take Jesse and Willie and Tyrone, and I'd say, let's just go fishing. You know, we've been through worse. We'll get through this as long as we get through it together. But I didn't know that. You know, I didn't know that. I was extremely confused. I was extremely desperate. I made the choice to do that. That's what I did. And here we are 34 years later talking about it. Does that answer your question, Dana?
Well, was this something before you decided to do this? Was this something you had been thinking about for a while, or did you consider talking to someone about it? Did you have anyone in your life that you felt comfortable enough to tell them you were contemplating?
Well, you brought that up. Yeah. Hey, this is a perfect segue into one of the red flags we're going to talk about with the other cases. I actually got in trouble earlier in the year, and so I was on probation. So I had to go visit a probation officer, and this was the spring before this happened. And I broke down in front of her for an hour, bawling my brains out, begging for help because something was wrong. But here's where the problem is. As a little kid, I was ashamed of being judged. I was ashamed of being punished, and I was scared. So I didn't tell her the truth because I was trying to protect myself, but I was trying to ask for help. I was trying to protect the people around me. I was lost, but I was begging for help. And unfortunately, that's the last time I ever saw them. So yeah, I did ask, but I didn't have the courage to tell the truth. If I would have, all I told her is I'm having bad thoughts. Something's wrong with me. And as far as planning anything out or anything like that, no, I had no concept of what I would, other than the fact I knew it was going to happen. I didn't have to plan anything or anything. It's weird how you kind of know something's going to happen, but you don't actually know how it's going to happen. It just happens.
So were you having intrusive thoughts or about this, and did you go there with the intention to tell her more about this, to get help?
I went to them with the intention of asking for help, but I wasn't honest, and I didn't tell them what was really wrong. So I didn't empower them to be able to help me. So other than her listening to me for an hour and watching me cry, nothing more came of it.
What could someone have said to you in that moment to get you to open up? You mentioned you were feeling shame, and you didn't come to a point in your conversation where you felt like you could really be vulnerable with her. What What can we learn from this? What's something that person could have said to you?
You know, when I think back on it, I wonder how it could have played out different. For myself, that I was cowardly, and imagining what she could have said or done that might have changed the circumstance. I would have, you know, in this day and age, I think if I was her, I would have immediately spotted there was a problem. And now, with the understanding I have now, I would say it sounds like you're scared. It sounds like you're going through a lot. Do you want to come see me tomorrow? Do you want to think about this and talk to me tomorrow? Would you like me to set up another meeting where we can talk some more? What are you feeling right now? What has you, you know, obviously you're having some pretty intense emotions. I would just ask, what would you like to see me do to help you? If I was talking to myself back then. Because I think there's a delicate line there, and it actually goes into the case of like the Winder, Georgia shooting case, and it's extremely personal for myself. You know, if you don't navigate that, especially with a little child, they're gonna freeze up, and you're not gonna get it out of them. And you know, it's like I remember when we got called into the police station when we were getting beat. We were covered, me and Jesse were covered in bruises, and they were taking pictures of us asking us what happened. But, you know, our mom had told us, you know, if we say anything, they're going to separate us. We're going to lose each other, and we're going to lose her. And so we said whatever we had to say to stay with the family and keep it together. We just made up excuses. Oh, well, we did this. This was an accident. Oh, I fell off the trampoline. You know, it's real easy, you know. And so, but I think if I seen a child like that going through that now, I would acknowledge, I would just let them be and let them know that I am there and encourage them. And I would make it a point to reach out to them or try to create some structure to engage with them on a different level or in a different environment or something. And if I had other resources at my disposal, I would probably alert them to where they could randomly bump into them without posing a threat. I don't know. You know, there's so many creative ways to transform that energy, but I've learned when it's so desperate, it's so delicate.
Was there anyone you felt like you could tell about the abuse that was going on from your mom, or did you not tell anyone?
No, mostly I just acted out in fantastical ways. Like another instance is when I was a couple months before that, I made a phone call like 3 a.m. and told this elaborate story of how I had been kidnapped and I was held under a light and how they cut me up. And I had systematically cut myself hundreds of times all over my body to where I had all these cuts. And you know, I came up with these just fantastic tales of these people, these mafia people are chasing me. I mean, it's like, it's obvious there was something extremely wrong as I made up these stories. And I shared these stories with people, I remember, but they were on the sidelines too. It's like, other than just watching the spectacle, they weren't empowered and they didn't understand how to help me. And, you know, I think nowadays the education's so much more. So people spot those red flags, where back then maybe they didn't recognize them. And I don't know. You know, I showed a lot of signs, but I wasn't truthful with anyone.
So there was at no point there was any CPS intervention, or nobody really knew about the abuse. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah, other than those, like, isolated little incidences, I was on the honor roll. I was vice president of the Key Club. I was number 1 seed in the state for wrestling. I was already a state champion. I was in the marching band. I was a lifeguard that was saving people's lives, pulling kids and other people out of the water, taking care of, making sure they stayed safe. I mean, on the surface, I had the perfect mask. You would think I was just a perfect straight A jock kid, just great. I was actually, I had been talked to by the University of Wyoming wrestling coach that as long as I kept up the good grades and kept doing well, that I had a potential full ride at the University of Wyoming. The whole world, on the surface, but it didn't. At night, I was crying myself to sleep, repeating words. I'm nothing but a loser. I'm no good. And making myself cry, and I would lay there for hours, and then I got in the habit where I would just sneak out and run in the night. I could run 5-6 miles in 30-35 minutes. And I would go into town, walk around, do whatever, and then go home. I was just all over the place. And no matter how anyone tried to build me up, on the surface, even though I knew how to go through the motions properly, I was talking to myself and just beating myself down internally. And I thought anyone that cared about me was damaged, because how could anyone love me? How could anyone feel anything for me? Because I'm no good. I'm worthless. And so, yeah, it's a nasty cycle when you are looking through.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this relationship with your mom, and a little bit more about the types of abuse that happen in your relationship with her?
Well, are you talking about my real mom?
I'm sorry, your stepmother.
My stepmom? Well, I think my stepmom fell in a bad spot. I think my stepmom by herself was a very devoted, amazing woman. But as a child, caught in between circumstances and what I didn't have the understanding. Because my mom on one side was a Playboy bunny, party girl, music producer, hustling, businesswoman. Just super smart, super talented, gorgeous, and free, fun, loving. And my dad, on the other hand, was very strict, authoritarian military marine, and had very strong moral ethics of loyalty and discipline. And I fell in between that because there was an incident that when I moved up to Story when I was 8. Andrew, we haven't got to this part yet, obviously, but we'll get to this when we do our other stuff. It's hard to talk about stuff without laying examples. It was me, Tyrone, and Willie. We lived there. Or me, Willie, and Jesse. I'm sorry. Tyrone hadn't been born yet. We lived in a cabin in Story, and with everything that led up to that point, I had this belief that you don't sleep with someone because it's sacred. You only sleep with the person you love. And, Andrew and I think this is out there. I think this is one of the other podcasts we've talked about this. And so I told Jesse, and do not do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Well, Dad was working the oil rig, so it was just Becky, me, Jesse, and Willie. And each night she would take turns with him, sleeping in the bed down there, downstairs. And because we lived in this really nice log cabin where the three of us slept upstairs. And so finally, I don't know how to say it, but I felt I broke weak, and I went down there. I wanted to know what it was like. And I remember crying. And I remember her pulling me close to her. And I don't remember anything after that, but I know I hated her. And to be truthful with you, it wasn't, I think it was shame that I betrayed my dad. It was shame that she betrayed my dad. And it's not that anything happened, but that's how twisted and how... So I was confused. I had some really strong emotions that I didn't understand. And so in all that mix, she was nothing but a cheat. And then as I got older, and then I moved away after that year. And it didn't help that my mom was always pushing and prodding, saying that she was trying to replace her and how Dad was turning me into an unloving shell. And so I was always taking that rap beating from my mom's side. Divorced parents are tough. There's a lot of kids out there that have to navigate this. And that's one of the reasons Andrew and I created our project, because I understand that. And that's why I'm there for anyone who reaches out to me, because I can embrace them and stand beside them no matter what they go through, because I have no judgment. I'm an open book, and I have the strength to live through anything. That's something that I've already been there, done that. So I can understand. But
when you were talking about your mom and an incident with her, or were we talking about your biological mother or your stepmother?
The incident was with my stepmom. When I mentioned my real mom, I was talking about the fact that she points fingers, like she showed up that winter and pointing the fingers that Becky I was trying to replace my real mom with Becky. And you know how, so just out of loyalty to my real mom, I had to display hate towards Becky so that my mom knew that it's like, I love you, Mom. And that's where a confused child will just be vicious, just trying to protect and be loved. And so there was a lot of different angles and different ways of navigating that.
You were looking for real love from your real mom.
Yeah. I mean, I was always, for the longest time I tried to please her. As I got older, I withdrew, and and then her attacks got even worse, and how I didn't love her, and how Becky was replacing her, and then it was really bad and there's no boundaries there. So my entire concept of boundaries and understanding were twisted, because when I was 11, my real mom came up, and me, Jesse, and her stayed at the Holiday Inn in Thermopolis, and she wanted me to sleep in the bed naked with her, and I refused. And I tried to talk Jesse out of it, and I slept on the floor with all my clothes on, because I couldn't stand to be touched. And it was a continuous push. And so I listened to hours upon hours of how Dad ruined me, and how I was nothing but a cold, unloving shell, and how she should have never let me live with him, and on and on and on, and how Becky's replacing her, and blah, blah, blah. And that's... and between that and between Ace dying, you get some... I got twisted. I was just spun, and I was tangled in knots, and I was not okay. And if you're being attacked by someone that you love, and you're being accused of betraying them, if you show kindness to someone else, as a child, so what do? I treat Becky poorly, because I'm trying to prove that I love my mom. I was confused, and I was desperate, and I had a billion emotions in me from all over the place, and and that's why I come back to this statement, desperation leads to desperate acts.
How old were you when this inappropriate boundaries, blurring the line between, sexual contact with your mother, at what age did that start? How old were you?
With my mom? With my real mom?
Yeah. When did that start?
Oh. Well, my first memories that I consciously am aware of it was when I was 5, when we lived in Lake Charles, because she always ran around naked, and how it was God's beautiful body, and I was smoking weed, and it was just, that's that. I don't remember it really taking a toll on me until I started getting a little older, to where I started refusing that. Like, I remember the incident when I was 11. I know something happened when I was 8 at that motel because I came out of there, and then I remember just hating Becky. But I don't, because she came and saw us for Christmas, so there's something else there. I just spun around. I'm sorry. This gets tough for me sometimes to keep all this in order. But, and then when I was 11 with that, but I knew how to say no at that point. Then, when I was 14, I think it was, she's just sitting there playing with vibrators, just looking at us. Looking at me and Jesse while she's showing off her vibrators. But I didn't get touched like that ever again. I wouldn't let it happen. And then I remember even after I was in prison and stuff, I remember she came and visited me, and she spent like 6 to 8 hours just berating me, going through all these different angles and crying how I'm just like all the other men, use her and throw her away and blah, blah, until finally I consented to let her cut my hair. And I never felt so dirty. I was sick. I left. I ran out of the visit. I couldn't handle it anymore. And that was after the crime. So, it took me a long time to grow up and be able to cope with some of that stuff. Yeah, actually, to follow up on inappropriate stuff, I think Andrew and I talked about, I think I was 7 down in the Florida Keys when they stole my clothes and stuff and made me get out of the pool naked. And then later, this pretty teenage girl was giving me hickeys and stuff, and I ended up getting heartbroken over that. But so I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned boundaries earlier. These really inappropriate boundaries with your mom, and how confusing it was for you to make sense of what is happening.
Where do you want me to go with that?
Is this something you were ever able to talk about with your dad? Was he aware of this?
He just knew we were abused pretty bad. He knew we got the living hell beat out of us when we were in Boynton Beach. Because when I ended up with the broken ribs and ruptured spleen, it got us out of there. It got Jesse out of there as soon as he showed up, and it got me out of there 3 months later when the doctor cleared me. He knew about the police getting involved because of all the bruising on our bodies. Our stepdad had he had neighbors over, and the neighbor was complaining about how his kids were behaving, and so he made me pull down my pants and pull up my shirt, and from my shoulder blades to the back of my knees, it was solid bruising from being beaten every day. And the neighbor immediately called the police on us, and that's how that even became public. And so Dad knew about that, and he just, I don't know. No, we've never really talked about it.
So there was at least one CPS call that was documented, and that was it.
Yeah, that happened, I think, when I was 9 years old.
And so none of this went to trial. You took a plea, and I'm just, in relation to this abuse, I know some people don't take things to trial, or all this stuff will be exposed. Was that something you considered about having, was information later revealed about you?
Yeah, that actually was a factor. That it basically just shut everything down. I did it, therefore I was responsible for it. I took ownership of it, and it was time to move on. There was also the attorneys had told me, even my own guardian ad litem, they came in and lectured me. They said, look, we had you out because these 5 mental health experts said you were all insane, but they couldn't agree with what was wrong with you. And then this other one came in, and he's like, the reason he can't agree is because he's malingering. He admitted to me he lied. And it's funny because it came down to a Rorschach test where I wouldn't tell the doctors that I was seeing blood or that I was seeing bad things because I didn't want them to judge me. And so I admitted to him that I didn't tell the truth. And so he used those words to say that I had malingered. And they trumped up these crazy idea that, oh, he's super smart. He's 15 years old with the equivalence of a college graduate. He tricked us. And so I listened to all these doctors get on the stand, and they testified how they felt something was extremely wrong with me. And then they said that they were tricked. And now they just know they feel I'm malingering. And so I watched this change to where, and so then my attorneys are saying, well, we would have got you the help, but now that this has happened, you're going to die in prison if you don't take this plea. You're going to get 4 consecutive life sentences, and you have no chance of ever getting out. If you take this plea, you'll do 12 years on the life sentence, and then on the 18 to 20, you'll lose more. And as long you have an opportunity to grow up, mature, go to school, and learn, and when you have a better understanding of life in your 30s, in your mid to late 30s, you'll have a chance to get out. And I believed them. So I pled guilty and under that consent. And then I got to the prison, and I was immediately taught that all life in Wyoming is life without parole unless commuted or acted upon by executive decision. And so it was, I was lied to. That's the bottom thing. They flat out told me, if you take this, you'll have a chance. If you don't, you're going to die. And I believed them, and I made that choice, and it turned out it was a lie.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned malingering. So malingering is a specific term, like lying for secondary gain. And so there's, either you were malingering memory, malingering psychosis, malingering mental health symptoms. So what is it that they're alleging that you were malingering?
Well, they did all come to the agreement that the year before, the entire winter before, I did suffer from severe depression because I was extremely suicidal. They didn't argue on that part. The psychotic episodes of me making phone calls, of me cutting myself, of me running away, they said that was the malingering, and that I had been planning and acting out all these weird, crazy, out of ordinary behaviors in an attempt to form a defense for when I was 15 when I did the crime, and that I had been staging the entire thing for a year and a half before that. That was one of the accusations of the malingering.
And I'm curious, did they ever come up with a diagnosis?
No, actually, every time I've ever been examined, they say I'm perfectly healthy. I actually was blessed with the opportunity to work with a Dr. Medea Woods, and she spent 5 years with me. She did EMDR with me. She taught me art therapy. She changed my entire. I would not be the man I am today if it hadn't been for her help. But she made it flat out. She said that I have because of the way I grew up. She used to look at me, because we would get things that happen in prison. I would 40 people would attack 20 people, and you'd see just massive fights and massive gang fights, and stuff would go off. And I was in the middle of it, but I am proud to say I've never affiliated with anyone, so I've always avoided it. All my life, I have no violence on my record other than the fact that I came to prison as a murderer. It's not my fight. That's not who I am. I've always walked my own path. But she would look at me, and because she used to spend a lot of time with me, she looked at me, she goes, "Do you feel it yet?" And she'd look all at me all serious, and at first I didn't understand, like, what are you talking about? And she goes, "No, you don't feel it yet." And then a few days later, she'd ask me, and she goes, "There you go." And she goes, "That's your survival mechanism. You've learned to disassociate yourself when you know how to function at super high levels in the heat of a moment, but because you step outside yourself and you get done whatever needs done." And then she goes, "You need to learn how to connect your intellect with your emotions, so you're more in the moment." And that was something that she taught me how to do, because that was part of the treatment and some of the learning process I had to go through to heal.
Oh, I'm so glad you got connected to her. Yeah, disassociate, really disconnect you from yourself, and it can be like psychosis. And so is her feedback with you that some of those things you were experiencing was related to disassociation?
actually asked me that when it came to the crime. She goes, did you, but we're not, I don't want to talk about that tonight. So yeah, just, she always pointed out, and the way I survived the beatings and the way I survived other traumatic events it was just a skill I learned to survive. I wouldn't have survived otherwise.
Wow. So no diagnosis they came up with and all that. There was no consensus.
Yeah, the doctors came up with schizophreniform, intermittent explosive disorder, depression, and a bunch of other things. I don't even remember. But I did have the amazing Dr. Wachtel from Aurora come spend some time with me just a few years ago, and he actually got on the air on A&E Kids Behind Bars, and he was going to testify in the front of the Supreme Court if I ever got to go to into the court. That there's nothing wrong with me, and he thought it was amazing because he was expecting certain signs and symptoms of someone who spent his entire life incarcerated, and yet I've learned to become an educated, well-rounded individual in prison, and he was very surprised by that. And I was stunned by the affirming comments and supportive comments that he made after he.
Yeah, it's schizophreniform. That diagnosis is an onset to schizophrenia. So that sounds like that was not the correct diagnosis at all. Clearly, that's not.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, when I was a kid, they were all over the place. They've all been debunked.
I'm so curious because since that's what I do, I would just be curious about the tests they use, how they came to these decisions, and then just in this conversation we're having here, letting people know how important it is these evaluations are, and basically your mental health is on trial. So whatever, so it's important to get.
The test they gave me when they arrested me, they took me in the jail, and a doctor saw me, and I was just so out of it that he immediately had me flown to the Wyoming State Hospital in Evanston. We flew in like a little Cessna thing. And I went in there, I was there for 60 days. And during the 60 days, they did a massive amount of blood tests, fasting blood tests, hooked me up to sensors in my brain, put me in CAT scan machines. They would show me pictures and tell me to tell them a story about it. They would show me Rorschachs. They would ask me to move puzzle pieces around. They did hypnosis. They monitored and logged everything I did and how I talked, and that's basically the test they did for 60 days. And then they sent me back to the county jail, and that's where the first doctor that sent me down there was the doctor that came and spent all morning with me, just me and him in a room in a little video camera, and he was telling me he was going to put me under hypnosis, and he could just put me under hypnosis with a snap of a finger. And so he's in and out, and I didn't know what happened. And so then he went to lunch, and I learned later that he had lunch with the district attorney. It's funny. You can't even make this stuff up. It's so wild. But he comes back and he starts accusing me of lying. And that's when I admitted that I didn't tell the truth on the Rorschachs. I saw nasty things that I didn't want to be judged for. And then apparently I changed my story while I was under hypnosis. And someone that saw the video, and I've never seen it, so I don't know, but I guess he was interrogating me under hypnosis about some shells. And at some point, I changed up and says, "Oh, I see them," or something. And when I did that, that's how he came to the fact that I was malingering, because he said, "Well, when I changed that, I wasn't actually under hypnosis." It was, it was a wild experience.
That's so fascinating, all that you went through, because that is so. A lot of what you're describing is very unusual. Hypnosis. So are you saying that you don't think you were under hypnosis?
I don't even know what it was. I know he'd have me lay down and he'd tell me to count backwards and imagine doing through stairs and floating in the clouds, and then I could focus on details and like memories and stuff. It's amazing because when they did me a hypnosis, they did it in Evanston, and when I came out of hypnosis in Evanston, with a couple for a matter of hours, they actually got really concerned. When I came out of the hypnosis, my entire body turned as purple as a plum. I didn't even look human. I was more purple than a Oompa Loompa. It was insane how my entire body changed colors for hours after that hypnosis session. It was just so and that was filmed too, but I don't know what happened there.
That's fascinating because that's definitely not standard procedure. Some of the things that you're talking about, this is before my time, before I became a forensic psychologist, but a lot of what you're describing, it almost sounds experimental on you. It's so interesting, the process that you went through.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I think my stepmom, my current stepmom, she said it best. She goes, doctors go to school all their lives to learn, and, when they get done, there's a reason they say practicing medicine, right?
Well, the field of forensic psychology has come a long way, and so I'm so curious about some of the procedures that they use to assess you for competency or insanity, or these malingering assessments, or the therapy. But can I ask you a couple fun questions?
Hey, whatever you want. Let's go.
Okay, so some people wanted to know, have you gotten any marriage proposals while incarcerated?
So that's just funny because there was a time in Wyoming State Penitentiary where women would get mad if I didn't hit on them, because every single woman in that facility I hit on, because I had come to the conclusion I was going to die in prison. I was going to spend my entire life in prison, so I was going to figure out what a relationship was like, because it's a dream of mine that someday, if I ever do get out, I want to know what it's like to wake up next to a woman that loves me. I just want to, that's something I don't understand or comprehend at all. So I spent 6 months in isolation because I asked an officer to marry me. I got in trouble because I learned all the phone numbers, and when this really beautiful CO was working the tower, I went into the sergeant's office and called the tower just to say, I just called to say I love you. I've asked like a million different people to marry me. But the thing is, it's like, I'm really good at living this little fancy fantasy with these people. I actually had some people say yes. I think I've been engaged like all the time because they tease me. I actually was on a show, Women Who Love Men Behind Bars, because she flew up here with the producer and they got pictures of me proposing and stuff. But it never turns into anything because the reality is I'm spending the rest of my life in prison and I'm going to die in prison. So they don't have any hope. And for them to truly bind themselves to me, that's not fair to them at all. So, but I mean, it's a fun fantasy to play with for 6 months or a year until they get the confidence to go find someone they can actually be with.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're the one doing some of the marriage proposals. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've lost count. I ask everyone. I hit on every woman. Yeah, I have no qualms. I chase women, I think.
Okay. All right, here's another one. What's the weirdest rumor or myth that you've ever heard about yourself?
About myself?
Yeah, sometimes you're out there in the media and, they don't get it right and they share information that's not accurate. Is there anything that's been out there you go, wow, that's...
All right, so I'll tell you one that happened in prison when I was a juvenile. And I'll tell you one that happened out there that's actually on the media and national television. So the one that happened in here, this dude got locked up, and he made an agreement with the associate warden that he'd quit fucking me if they let it, or that he promised not to fuck me if he got out of SEG, because apparently they believed he was taking advantage of me, which is absolutely false. I've never been with a man, and I've never been with a woman, so that was just all in his imagination. So that was pretty damn strange, and I was a little upset about that was even perceived. But that's just part of the prison world. People say whatever they want. Now out there, I have the stepsister, Becky's sister, Jolene, and also the blonde again, trying to say that I stuck a shotgun in one of my little brother's mouths. And there is absolute no reality to that other than their own fantasies so that they can create this graphically disturbing image so they can justify objectifying that, oh, I did so terribly and therefore I deserve to die in prison. They're just making shit up at this point. And even at the Wyoming Supreme Court, when we argued for resentencing rights, my attorney, even though they said I don't deserve resentencing, he made it real clear there is no evidence ever of that happening. There's never been evidence presented, and that it's a complete falsehood, and it's just an attempt to make something look worse than it is so they can justify the sentence. And so that's a really bad one that I will dispute, I mean, flat out, because it's just retarded. It wasn't the reason I did it. I'm not like that. There was never, yeah. So that bothers me. So that's a rumor that is definitely interested.
I have a question for you when you mentioned the shotgun, because I watched one of your specials. After the event, were you, and it was per your own testimony, you thought about ending your own life. Is that true at that time?
Yeah, I think that was kind of, for some reason it didn't happen, because it's like, because I was trying to make all the pain go away and everything, but for some reason it didn't happen like that. It's just, it changed. I don't know. It just didn't happen. I don't even know how to, because up until and throughout all that, it was about killing myself anyways. And yeah, I don't know. That's always been kind of a gray area for me.
And so would you say you spent a good part of your childhood kind of struggling with suicidal ideation?
Oh yeah, even into my 20s, even in prison, I think I've probably tried to kill myself 100 different times. I can't believe I'm not dead or more seriously hurt. I've literally have scars on my wrists from where I have tried to chew into the veins to where I would bleed to death. I've taken 70 pills in one time. I fasted for 9 days and then took like 35 speed to see if it exploded my heart. I've tried hanging myself. I couldn't talk for weeks after I hung myself one time. I've tried every trick. I've done I've went through strip searches with razor blades and then cut myself hundreds and hundreds of times to where there wasn't a single inch from my chest down to the bottom of my feet that wasn't cut up. I have done horrible, horrible, horrible things to myself. I actually had a lump on my testicle, and I wasn't getting medical treatment, and so I read somewhere that every surgery they ever tried to cut through the scrotum to take testicular cancer out, the patient died. So I cut that testicle out of my scrotum and told them, all right, let's go to the hospital. I still have both my testicles because I didn't cut them off, and I lived through that. It's like no matter what I tried, I couldn't die.
As far as red flags, like having suicidal ideation is a red flag for homicidal thoughts.
Oh, are they? Yeah, I think it's a sign. Yes, absolutely. Talking about red flags, I think any kind of harm is harm, and I think that it's a sign of desperation, and it's a sign of intense emotion that's lost and confused. And it's an energy, and it's a destructive energy. So yes, I do absolutely think that, and that's, so yes, suicidal tendencies is a form of violence just like acting out. Whether it's internal or external, it is extremely violent.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I agree with you. And as someone that's worked inpatient for 4 years and dealt with homicidal individuals and suicidal individuals, I saw a theme of people that were brought in for danger to others. They also were suicidal. And,
Oh.
yeah, so one of the things that I would help with was crisis intervention, stabilizing them from their suicidal or homicidal thoughts before they could be released. And so I just never underestimate the power of an intervention.
It's funny you point that out because Esther and I, we created our website, reflectionsfromwithin.net. On there, we have a spot to where if anyone is feeling like harming themselves or others, that they can leave a voicemail asking for help. And if they ask for help, they're promising, because I'm in prison, so I obviously can't get right back to them. And so by them asking for help, they're promising not to do any harm to themselves or others until at least I can get back to them. And just by doing that alone, it creates a potential 10-hour, 24-hour, or 48-hour stopgap until I can get the email and be able to respond to them. And hopefully it also, like you said, an intervention, it intervenes and gives them an excuse not to do anything for enough time for them to maybe think about it and reflect and think of other, and move out of that desperate scenario. And so not only can they get my help directly, it gives them a chance to stall and to move. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, to me, that whole promise not to do anything for a short period of time is the intervention.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you're in a position now to be able to help others.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate talking with you tonight and sharing this, and I hope people listening might find something that they can relate to where maybe it'll inspire them to help someone else, or maybe help themselves. And, moving forward, my door is always open to you. Anything you want to discuss, I would definitely look forward to working with you and talking with you more in any effort to help people.
Yeah, I just appreciate your openness and your availability to be vulnerable. I have a question here from Jason Jensen, PI. He has, have others confess their crimes to you.
Okay, I'll just out of respect of others, yes, people confide in me about everything under the sun, but it stops with me. That's not for me to share. That's for them to share if they want to share it with anyone other than me. But I am a source to where they know they can lean on me and depend on me to tell them the truth. And so, yeah, people have shared a lot of very confidential things with me. And
I bet. Is there anything you'd like to share with people who are struggling right now with mental health or having, suicidal thoughts? What's your message to them?
Okay, so there's two things I would like to share to take this minute. Yes, number one, one of the biggest lessons I learned was do no harm to yourself or others. And it took me a long time to understand that, because I got the do no harm to others down, but I was really good at playing a martyr. And so with anyone loses in any transaction, everyone loses. So whenever there's an opportunity of a choice being made to focus do no harm to yourself or others, I would ask that try to find a win-win scenario to where it's equal to where everyone can come out ahead. And with that said, do no harm through our actions. The other thing is, no matter how bad anything is in life, no matter how tough it is, it's not about fixing it. It's not about the outcome so much as it's about the journey. And it's like, if I could change anything in my life, I would go and take my brother's hand and say, hey, let's go do something together. This is bad. We don't know what's going to happen, but whatever comes, we'll share the experience and we'll get through it. And that's what I would say to anyone out there is embrace your friends, love the people you love, and share the experience and live in the moment for what there is. And it's not beyond that. What comes is what comes. And so that's I guess what I would share.
Wow, thank you, James.
Yeah, Absolutely welcome. Well, thank you. I need to go, but I hope you have a great night. To all you people listening, thank you all for joining in.